It's strange looking back at it now. What began as a simple retreat, one that I led countless times before, turned into something I could never have anticipated. And to think it all started with a group of eager participants, excited to get away from their hectic lives and reconnect with nature. I, Ms. Elise, had organized a Sketch the Wild activity in the heart of the Appalachian Mountains. I had done this 100 times, guiding groups of people through the dense forest, helping them capture the beauty of the wilderness in their sketchbooks. The towering trees, the fresh mountain air, the whisper of the wind. It was a perfect escape for those seeking peace, tranquility, or simply a break from the chaos of their busy lives. We had settled in a cabin deep within the woods, a quaint little place surrounded by towering pines. The perfect setting for our activity. The day was bright, the air was crisp, and everything seemed peaceful, idyllic even. But there was something unsettling about that place that I couldn't quite shake off. We were a small group, just 8 of us, with a mix of older and younger participants. They scattered around the grounds, finding spots to sit and sketch the natural beauty around them. Among them was Claire. She was young, no older than 15, with a sharp, almost eerie focus in her eyes. While the others were content with sketching scenes of rolling hills and playful wildlife, Claire's page was filled with dark, twisted images. At first, I didn't think much of it. Perhaps it was just a young girl's overactive imagination. But as I walked past her, I couldn't help but glance at the drawing. A cabin, much like the one we were staying in, but surrounded by piles and piles of bones. It was unsettling. The image felt wrong, unnatural, and I couldn't ignore the sinking feeling in my stomach. "Claire," I called softly, kneeling beside her. "What are you drawing?" She didn't immediately answer, her pencil moving swiftly over the paper. When she did look up, her eyes were distant, as if she were lost in another world. "This is where my family feeds," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The words hit me like a cold breeze, and for a moment, I was frozen. What did she mean by that? Was she just messing around, trying to spook the group? I smiled nervously, trying to brush off the strange feeling building inside me. "That's quite a vivid imagination you have, Claire." She didn't respond, just turned back to her drawing, her focus unwavering. We all laughed it off, assuming she was being dramatic, maybe trying to gain some attention. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The others seemed fine, chatting and sketching happily. But every now and then, my gaze would drift to Claire, her dark sketch contrasting against the bright green landscape. It felt wrong. That night, after the group had gathered around the cabin's fireplace to eat and chat, I noticed Claire was missing. I hadn't heard her leave, and I had assumed she was simply tired, maybe off in the woods alone. But as the evening wore on, concern began to settle in. We called out for her, but no answer came. Panic started to rise, but we pushed it aside, thinking she had just wandered off. It was past midnight when we decided to search for her. The moonlight filtered through the trees, casting long shadows that made the forest seem alive in its own way. We split into groups, heading in different directions, calling her name through the dense woods. I remember that moment clearly, walking deeper into the forest, the cold air cutting through me, when I noticed something strange. A clearing ahead, and in the distance, a faint light flickering through the trees. I hurried toward it, thinking maybe it was Claire or someone who had found her. But as I neared, a sense of dread overcame me, and I stopped dead in my tracks. There, standing at the edge of the clearing, was a cabin. It was almost identical to the one we were staying in, except it was old and worn down, and it was unmistakably the one from Claire's drawing. The piles of bones, just as she had drawn them, lay scattered around the cabin like a macabre monument. My heart skipped a beat. The pieces of the puzzle clicked into place. Claire had known this place. She had known it too well, and she had drawn it not as an imaginative vision, but as a reality. I was about to turn back when I saw a movement. Someone stepped out of the cabin's door, and for a moment, I froze in place. It was Claire's parents. At least, they looked like her parents. They greeted me with a warm, almost unsettling smile, their faces too serene, too calm for the situation. "Ms. Elise," Claire's mother said, her voice smooth and sweet. "We've been expecting you. You've come just in time for supper." I didn't know what to say. I was trying to keep my composure, but a wave of unease swept over me. "Supper?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Where is Claire?" Her father stepped forward, his eyes twinkling in a way that made my skin crawl. "She's with us, dear. Come inside. There's no need to worry. You've made the journey out here. You should rest." Against every instinct I had, I stepped inside. They welcomed me with open arms, and everything seemed so normal at first. The inside of the cabin was charming, with rustic furniture and the smell of something cooking on the stove. But it wasn't long before the doors were locked behind me. My heart pounded in my chest. There was something so wrong about this place. I tried to keep my voice steady as I asked again, "Where's Claire?" Just as I spoke, I heard the sound of chanting coming from the other room. The door to the dining area swung open, revealing a scene I'll never forget. My friends, those who had come on the retreat, were kneeling on the floor, their eyes wide with fear, as Claire's parents circled them, chanting something in a language I didn't recognize. A sickening realization hit me. This wasn't a retreat. This wasn't just a peaceful cabin in the woods. It was a cult, a commune of cannibals who fed on those who came too close. I watched in horror as Claire's parents advanced, knives glinting in the firelight. They were preparing for a ritual, one that would claim my friends as their next victims. I had to escape. I ran. The storm cellar was the only way out. I stumbled, frantic, through the narrow halls, pushing past old wooden crates and jars that rattled with each step. The door to the cellar creaked open just as I heard the first scream. I don't remember how I got back to the main road. I must have blacked out from fear, because the next thing I knew, I was stumbling into the arms of a passing trucker. I barely had the strength to tell him to drive me to the nearest town. When I finally made it to the authorities, I couldn't find the words to describe what I had witnessed. They went back to the cabin with me, but it was gone. No sign of the commune, no trace of Claire's parents. All that remained was a cabin from her drawing, abandoned and decaying. The police didn't believe me. There were no bodies, no evidence, nothing to corroborate my story. Just a chilling drawing Claire had left behind. Her last words echoed in my mind. "This is where my family feeds." It's been months since that night. I'm still trying to make sense of it all. And sometimes when I'm out in the woods, I can almost hear the faint chanting in the distance just beyond the trees. I wonder if I'll ever be able to escape the memory of that place, or if it will find me again. We had moved to Willow Creek a year ago, drawn by the promise of serenity in the dense woods. The cabin was old, but its rustic charm spoke to Rachel and me, and we thought it would be the perfect place to raise our son, Danny. He was an imaginative child, always creating things with his hands, mostly clay sculptures, which he molded with a focus far beyond his years. At first, the isolation seemed like a blessing. Danny spent his afternoons crafting little animals and figures, while Rachel and I immersed ourselves in a quiet life. It was peaceful until it wasn't. One evening, as the sun dipped below the treetops and the woods outside turned to shadow, I came across one of Danny's sculptures on the kitchen counter. It was a frail, elderly woman, hunched over and gaunt, her bony hand holding that of a small boy. "Who's this supposed to be, buddy?" I asked, forcing a smile. Danny looked up from where he sat at the table, his small hands still caked in dried clay. "That's Grandma Elsie," he said matter-of-factly, as though I should have known. The name hit me like a slap. Grandma Elsie. That was Rachel's grandmother. I'd only heard about her in passing. She died long before I met Rachel. "Where did you hear that name?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. She told me. Danny said, his tone bright and innocent. "She visits me at night. She says she likes my sculptures and that I'm getting better." I froze, the hair on my arms standing on end. "Danny, Grandma Elsie isn't. She passed away a long time ago." Danny just shrugged. "I know, but she still comes." I told Rachel about it later that night. She brushed it off as Danny's overactive imagination, though I could see a flicker of unease in her eyes. Things escalated quickly after that. A few nights later, I woke up to the faint sound of Danny's voice drifting down the hall. The clock read 2:13 a.m. I crept out of bed, careful not to wake Rachel, and followed the sound to the living room. There he was, sitting cross-legged on the floor, his hands shaping a lump of clay. He was conversing, with no one. "Danny?" I called softly, my throat tightening. He looked up, startled. "Shoo," he whispered, glancing at the empty space beside him. "You'll scare her away." "Scare who?" I demanded, stepping closer. "Grandma Elsie," he said, as if it were obvious. "She's teaching me how to make people look real." A chill coursed through me. "There's no one here, Danny." "She's right there," he said, pointing to the space beside him. "She says you can't see her because you don't believe." I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I found another sculpture on the coffee table. It depicted a family seated around a dining table, their faces contorted in horror. On the table were what looked like severed limbs. I stared at it, bile rising in my throat. "Danny, what is this?" "It's dinner," he said simply, his tone far too casual for what he created. Rachel walked in, her eyes widening at the sight of the sculpture. She pulled me aside, her voice low and panicked. "This is getting out of hand. Adam, what's wrong with him?" "I don't know," I admitted, but I was determined to find out. That evening, while Rachel distracted Danny, I went into the attic, searching for any old family photos or mementos that might shed light on this Grandma Elsie. Among the dust-covered boxes, I found a stack of yellowed newspapers. The headlines made my blood run cold. "Family survives brutal winter by turning to cannibalism." The articles detailed how Rachel's ancestors, stranded in the mountains during a harsh winter, had resorted to eating the dead to stay alive. Grandma Elsie's name appeared more than once as a central figure in the horrific tale. I confronted Rachel with the newspapers, and her face went pale. "I didn't know," she whispered. "My parents never talked about it. I thought it was just a rumor." That night, the cabin turned on us. The doors locked on their own, the windows refusing to budge. Shadows seemed to lengthen and twist in impossible ways, and the air grew heavy with the stench of decay. Danny stood in the middle of the living room, his eyes glassy and distant. "Grandma Elsie says it's time," he said in a voice that wasn't his. Rachel and I turned to see her, an apparition, translucent and skeletal, her hollow eyes burning with malevolence. "The tradition must continue," she hissed, her voice like dry leaves scraping together. "No," I said, grabbing Rachel's hand. "We're not part of this." But the spirit advanced, the walls of the cabin groaning and creaking as if alive. In a desperate bid, I grabbed the oil lamp from the mantel and smashed it to the floor, igniting the old wooden boards. Flames roared to life, licking at the walls and forcing the specter to retreat, her shrieks filling the air. We barely made it out. The cabin burned to ground, taking Grandma Elsie with it, or so we thought. Danny hasn't been the same since. His drawings are darker now, haunting images of the cabin, the dinner table, and shadowy figures that seem to loom over him. He doesn't talk about Grandma Elsie anymore, but sometimes, late at night, I hear him whispering, and I wonder if we ever truly escaped.